Let me launch into my intro, Patricia, and give your intro and some housekeeping items, and then we'll get started. So
Great.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. Again, I'm Nicole Anderson, and I'm the Associate Director of Tufts Alumni Career Services. Welcome to today's webinar, Getting Hired During COVID-19. We have three main goals in Tufts Alumni Career Services: to present programs like this, including webinars, and we will be doing some virtual networking events coming up probably in January and February. So look for that on our calendar. We present programs for all alums of all of the Tufts schools. And we've increased our offerings to help you during this time. So please be checking our calendar, not just for career and professional development webinars, but for a lot of different virtual programs that are happening with our shared interest in regional chapters. Our second goal in Alumni Career Services is to foster networking and connections between alumni and students, including a resource for alumni to alumni networking called The Herd. So I encourage you to get onto our website and check that out. And we also provide individual career coaching for graduates of arts and sciences, engineering, and the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. So now for today's webinar, we'll be presenting from 1 p.m. until about 1:45. During the presentation, you can type your questions in anytime into the chat box. And what we're going to do is I'm going to wait, Patricia's going to wait until certain points during her presentation to address those questions. So we'll be saving them. And my two colleagues from the Career Center, Susanna Kren and Sue Atkins, will be helping to facilitate the questions. I ask that you post those questions in the chat box to Susanna Kren. You can also post to everyone and she'll still see it and she'll feed it to me, and you can post anonymously in the chat box. If you have technical questions, please put those in the Q&A box. This webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube playlist in approximately a week. So let me intro our speaker, Patricia. Patricia Figueroa is an expert resume writer and career coach. As founder and CEO of the Career Glow Up LLC, she aims to assist entry, mid, senior, and executive level professionals with fully optimized resumes, cover letters, and LinkedIn profiles through her intensive personalized career coaching. The Career Glow Up mission is for clients to live their dream, not dream their life. Prior to founding the Career Glow Up, Patricia was a corporate recruiter for over 5 years, working for multiple Fortune 500 companies, including Dow Jones and Bank of America. She uses her insider knowledge of the interview and hiring processes to help her clients land the job of their dreams. So thank you for being here, Patricia. And I'm going to turn my video off, but I'll be back on at the end of this section with questions. Okay?
Okay. Thanks, Nicole. First of all, I just want to welcome everyone who's registered and who's here today, and want to get right into this. So, like Nicole just went into, what this is about is how to get hired during COVID-19. And definitely, this is an extremely challenging economy right now with everything that's going on. But there are strategies and techniques that you can definitely use to help maximize your chances of gaining employment, even during the pandemic. So we're just going to get right into this and start off with job search strategies. Okay, give me one moment. Okay, so first we want to start off with LinkedIn. And I know not everybody is on LinkedIn, and what I want to say is don't sleep on it. 93% of recruiters right now are on LinkedIn, so it's extremely important. It's not enough these days to just have a fully optimized resume. And when you consider the fact that anywhere from 70 to 80% of jobs are not posted on job boards, they're actually filled internally and filled through referrals, you definitely want to be on LinkedIn for those networking opportunities. So I'm going to just cover some basics right now, and then definitely a little bit later on, I'm going to get a lot more into specifically how to network on LinkedIn. But in case you don't have one, or you have one, but it's not really set up that much, you definitely want to set up. And then you want to have a well-lit, centered photo. Okay. You don't have to get this professionally done. You don't have to spend money on it. Honestly, like an iPhone 11 will do the trick. Okay. And then in terms of your headline, you do want to have a LinkedIn headline that utilizes keywords that align with the industry that you're targeting. Okay. And the reason for that is that recruiters are constantly searching passively for candidates to fill roles, and they are searching on LinkedIn utilizing these keywords. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. It will help you come up in the recruiter search results. Okay, and in terms of the summary, the about section, I do see a lot of people, even executive level clients of mine, that don't bother to fill this out, and that's a mistake, right? That is really your chance to tell recruiters about yourself. You really do want it to be personable and engaging, right? It's a little bit different from the resume that is a bit more dry, if you will, right? You want it to have a conversational tone and to be about 2 paragraphs long, right? Really just talking about what your experience is, what you're looking to do, and the value that you would add to an organization, okay? You also want to put keywords in that as well, all right? I can't emphasize keywords enough, because that is, again, what's going to help you come up in LinkedIn search results when recruiters are looking passively for candidates. Okay, and now let's talk about how you should job search, right? Should you be looking for jobs on company websites? Should you be going to job boards like Indeed and ZipRecruiter and Glassdoor, or should you just network, right? So there's different opinions about that. I take the all of the above approach. Okay, you shouldn't just be relying on applying to jobs, because that's not going to be enough, especially as competitive as things are right now, right? Given the number of people that are unfortunately unemployed. But you also don't want to just rely on networking. That is something that's being suggested a lot these days, that you don't even need to apply. And I don't agree with that, right? I think that you should do both. So that's the all of the above approach that I'm suggesting, right? So you do want to go to company websites and apply directly. Maybe there are companies that you're specifically interested in working in, right? So definitely go on ahead and go to those websites, click on the career section, and like I said, apply directly on that website. But there's also probably going to be those times where you just like, okay, I used to be a recruiter, so I would go to Indeed and just type in recruiter, right? So you want to then utilize LinkedIn for sure, Indeed, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, applying the job boards as well. But then you definitely also have to network, right? Just keep in mind, depending on the size of the organization you're applying to, for instance, when I worked in those Fortune 500 companies, I would sometimes literally have over 500 resumes to review for one position. And that's not possible for one human being to do, right? So, the fact is, a lot of times, just given the volume that's coming in, the recruiter just doesn't have time to get to all of the resumes, right? And that's why networking is so key. We're definitely going to cover that in a lot more detail later, but I just want to emphasize that you should definitely be taking an all of the above approach to your job search. Okay, and then networking. So like I said, we'll get more into this in a bit, but you're going to want to utilize LinkedIn, right? Again, that's where recruiters are. You're going to want to network with them. I'll tell you how in a bit. You don't even have to have a premium account, because that costs money. There's actually a free way to do it. So I'll kind of walk you guys through that. But you also want to network with hiring managers, right, that are in the industries that you're looking to get into, and industry professionals in general, right? You want to be active and engage on the platform. If you are on LinkedIn and you scroll down your profile, you're going to see that part that says activity. It's not good if it's blank, right? Definitely at least like posts, react to posts, comment posts even, and I encourage you guys to even share content. I know that's more challenging. Even when I tell my clients that, they'll go, well, Patricia, what am I supposed to share? It can be anything that interests you. that has to do with your field of interest. It can be an article, right? It doesn't have to be something that you yourself have created from scratch. But the more you engage on the platform, the more active you are. Honestly, the more LinkedIn's algorithm, rewards you for that. And it does move you up further in the search results. It's a bit of an oversimplification, but it's just really good to be active and visible on the platform. But like I said, there's a lot more of this coming, but it's kind of just a preview. And I'm just emphasizing and highlighting how important networking is to your job search. Okay, and then I want to talk a little bit about accountability, because that's also super important when it comes to your job search. So I've been using, or I was using, I'm sorry, before I started my business, a job application tracker. So I just want to talk about that a little bit. I used it for over a decade. You actually want to be tracking every single job that you apply to. It might seem a little bit time intensive, but whether it's a Google sheet or an Excel spreadsheet, you want to track the company, the location, job title, and the URL to the job. That one is really important because there was a time where I was unemployed, it was quite recent, and I had applied to hundreds of jobs, and a recruiter called me out of the blue. And if I wasn't able to pull up that tracker and Control F and then click on the job, I don't know that I would have known the job that the recruiter was referring to, because it starts to blend together when you apply to so many different positions. So a lot of times when the recruiter reaches out to you for a phone screen, and I know this from when I recruited, the job is still posted on the website. So it's just helpful, right? As the recruiter is going through the phone screen, to be able to actually look at the job description. What tracking your job applications also allows you to do is it lets you have metrics for your job search, right? What's the success, right? Like how many phone screens have you had? The way I have it on my tracker, or the way I had it, I should say, there was a column that had a drop down. So it just said phone screens, interviews, offers, did the company decline me, and ghosting, which I never did to anyone, but unfortunately it does happen, and it happened to me. If you're not familiar, that is when the recruiter just disappears on you completely, and you never hear anything back from your application, right? You don't get declined, you don't get anything. But you do, you want to track that because you need to have those numbers and those facts, right? Like out of X amount of applications, how many recruiters have even reached out to you, right? Or how many phone screens have you had, et cetera. It allows you to kind of take a step back and have a macro view of what is working, what is not working, do you need to do a course correct, et cetera. Without those numbers, it's a bit hard to determine that, right? So yeah, I encourage you all, it wouldn't even take you 5 minutes to put the sheet together. And if you actually drop it in for every job, it shouldn't be too time intensive, but it's very, very helpful to have that spreadsheet. Okay, so yes, so the next section, as I said, we're gonna get more into the actual networking techniques, okay? So what's really important is that you don't want to just apply, right? I had just mentioned that you want to have an all of the above approach. It's definitely not enough to just apply. You want to be on LinkedIn with that presence. You want to be connecting with recruiters, like I said, and with hiring managers. So I'm going to get all into that.
Patricia, can I
Yeah.
hate to interrupt you. Two
Sure.
questions did come in.
Okay.
From your last section.
Okay.
Around the job search. And I was wondering if I could pose those to you now.
Sure.
One question was, what does your recruiting experience tell you about the best ways to follow up after you've applied?
Sure, that's a great question. And what I would say is, so there's kind of two answers. This section is going to go into the fact that I suggest as soon as you apply to actually go on LinkedIn, find the recruiter at that company, right, at the location you apply to, and immediately send a connection request with the message, right? So it's kind of that immediate follow-up. However, really quickly, let's say you have an interview and the recruiter says, hey, we'll get back to you. I would allow a week to go by, right? And if you haven't heard back from the recruiter after a week, I think it's totally fair to reach back out and say, hi, following up for feedback and to reiterate your interest in the company and in the position.
Okay. And the second question that came up, you mentioned job application trackers. Do you have any apps, job application tracker apps that you would recommend to make it easy to track from your phone?
I don't know of any. That's a great question. It doesn't mean that they don't exist. I'd be more than happy for anyone who is in this webinar, if they're interested in my tracker, to email it to them. But yeah, I'm not aware of any, at least on the Android store, because I have an Android.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your answers, and I'll let you get back.
Okay, absolutely. So yeah, let's dive into the networking techniques, right? So as I said, you're definitely going to want to connect to recruiters, right? So this is kind of just the simplified, overall approach to this, and then I am going to break it down step by step, okay? But you're going to want to go to LinkedIn. So this is, like I said, after you apply for a position, you're going to want to type the company into the search bar, look the recruiters up in the location that you applied, to the position in, and send a connection request with a note, okay? And you're gonna actually wanna do this for every single application in a methodical fashion, right? And you're going to want to actually track your responses that you receive in the job applicant tracker that I mentioned. And there's a couple of reasons that you wanna do this. First of all, it's a great way to strategically grow your network on LinkedIn, right? So now it's not just coworkers or previous classmates and professors, right? You're expanding your network with recruiters and HR professionals, and it does increase your chance of an interview. I saw this many times at Dow Jones. I saw it myself, right? It is about taking that initiative, and many people, most people don't do it, right? Most people stop at applying, and that's not really enough, right? So like I said, though, let's kind of walk through this step by step. So like I said, there's just a tiny bit of research that's involved, but it's not going to take long, right? So the example I'm going to use is, let's say you applied to Lockheed Martin, right? So you applied on their company website. You're going to want to go to LinkedIn, go to the search bar at the top, type in Lockheed Martin, and as you can see, you're going to have a few options that come up, whether you're searching for people at Lockheed Martin, jobs, or the company itself. So you are going to want to, click on company. Then as you can see, Lockheed Martin will come up, and on the top right corner, it is going to say, see all, X amount of employees. So you're going to just click on that. And then you're going to see a separate page come up, okay? And in the top right corner, you're going to want to click on all filters, okay? Now at that point, you will need to just dig a little bit deeper. So what's gonna happen is, it is going to bring up additional filters. So the first thing you'll want to do is enter the location that you applied for the job in. Okay, so in this, made up example, I entered Greater Philadelphia. Okay, you're also then going to want to scroll down, and you will see, first name, last name, go past that to title, and you're going to want to enter recruiter. Okay, then in the upper right hand corner, you're going to want to click on apply. All right, and then we're finally at the step where you're basically going to, send that connection request. Now, just a short note though, for instance, Lockheed Martin obviously is a huge organization with over 100,000 employees, right? So even if I'm only looking for recruiters that are in Greater Philadelphia, it is going to pull up dozens of recruiters. We can see that there were 26 results that came up. What I'll also mention is, just as a former recruiter myself, most recruiters are not going to say on their LinkedIn profiles the exact business areas they recruited. Sometimes they will, but a lot of times they won't. So the point I'm making is, you're not going to know which recruiter actually handles the role that you applied for, but you're going to actually want to send that connection request anyway. Okay, I got a lot of messages, not a lot, but I got messages from candidates, and even if it wasn't a role that I handled myself, I would forward it to a recruiter on my team. Okay, so you're just, like I said, going to pick a recruiter in the area you applied for the role in. You're going to click on connect. And when you do that, you're going to see a message pop up that asks if you want to add a note to your invitation. Now, there is a 300-character limit to the note, so it's pretty short and sweet. But you just want to get across, your name, that you applied for, X position at Y company, and just very, very briefly discuss your experience that aligns with the position. So maybe you have internship experience or, work experience, whatever the case may be. And you definitely want to end it with, when might be a good time to connect. The reason that I say that is, it's a call to action, right? Or CTA, and that's really a sales term, but it really applies in almost any situation, right? It's a confident, strong way to close the message, and it asks the recruiter to take an action on your behalf. If you just leave it at, I applied at a position, it's not really asking them to take action, right? So, and then, send the connection request once you've done that. And then just to mention it one more time, you definitely want to track the responses you receive on the job applicant tracker, right? So you just want to drop in a note. I do have a column that just says follow up, right? That's just for LinkedIn. You just want to say, I sent X recruiter, connection request on Y date. And then if they come back to you, track that as well. But yeah, again, the reason that I suggest this is, first of all, most of the time, the recruiter will actually accept the request. I know I did it every time. They might not get back to you. I know that I didn't have time a lot of the time, especially if I wasn't recruiting for the position that the candidate was asking me about. But at the very least, like I said, you are expanding your network to include recruiters and HR professionals. So in my opinion, you really have nothing to lose. And sometimes you will get a response. And I've actually even seen people do this and they've gotten the job, whereas if they hadn't, they would have been buried in the applicant tracking system, right? Like I said, 500 resumes, right? People tend to get kind of, lost in the sauce, and not everybody can get looked at. So it's really a great method to follow. And like I said, if you do it with every single application, you should definitely start to see your network start to expand, and hopefully, like I said, even get some responses from these recruiters. Okay, so that really just covers, again, how you'd want to go about connecting to recruiters on LinkedIn, right? And doing it after every application. Okay, and then I want to talk a little bit about relational networking, right? So don't just like slide into the DMs, right? What I mean by that is, people sometimes take the approach where they don't try to get to know the people that they're networking with at all, right? And again, I'm always like an all of the above type of a person, right? There is a place for the method I just discussed where, okay, it's 300 characters. That's not a lot of space for anything, right? But you're also going to want to employ relational networking as well. So one of the most underutilized tools on LinkedIn, in my opinion, is LinkedIn groups, okay? And the thing is, it's totally free. So I don't know why more people don't use it, and it's a fantastic networking tool. I actually had a director of HR in New York reach out to me about a job I wasn't even aware of in D&I, and I got an in-person interview just from being in a D&I group. So I definitely want to give you guys some more information about it, just because, like I said, I think it's like criminally underused and can really help you with networking on LinkedIn and help you to, get employed. So this is kind of just a basic breakdown, then we're going to jump right into it. So, kind of at a macro level, what you're going to want to do is in the search bar, look up your field of interest, okay? And you're going to click on groups, okay? And you're definitely going to want to spend a little bit of time looking at the groups that come up in the results and then join the groups that appeal to you, okay? You do need to actively participate, right? This is something that's going to take a little bit more effort. It's not copy pasta. You're going to kind of need to go through the posts in the group, respond to people, comment, okay? So you can become visible in that group. And so people in the group can kind of get to know your face, right? That's the goal. And then once you've done that, you're going to want to start to send connection requests to members of that group, right? Again, always in a strategic fashion, right? So you want to look at the members of the group that are recruiters, HR professionals, and hiring managers, and then message them for informational interviews, okay? So let's kind of dive into this just a little bit more. So kind of taking you step by step, because like I said, I know a lot of people don't use LinkedIn groups at all. So again, you want to type in your field of interest into the search bar. So I'm just using diversity and inclusion as an example. And then as you can see, groups is going to come up as a option. So you're going to want to click on that. Now, my suggestion is that you do want to look for groups that have a lot of members, okay? Those tend to be the groups that are the most active, with the most participation. So like I said, do a little research. I would say look at like the first 10 groups or so that come up in the results. And then you do need to request to join, okay? So you're gonna go on ahead and click on that button. Typically, they should accept that request, the admins of the group, within about 24 hours. And you'll get a notification once that happens. And once you're accepted, you just want to start participating, like I said, but on a regular basis. Whatever you need to do, maybe set a reminder on your phone or something, but try to just go in the group like twice a week even, right? Read through the posts, like I said, interact with the fellow group members, and just become a visible member. And then, like I said, kind of once you've done that, maybe even try to share your own content. Like I said, I know that's always more challenging. It was even a little bit challenging for me, but it doesn't have to be something that you've created yourself. You can go, I'm making this up, but like to CNN or something and just get an article. So again, D&I, maybe get an article on D&I and just share that to the group, right? You just want people to start to recognize your name, start to get to know you. And once you've done that, you want to send connection requests to the fellow members of the group, okay? Because there's already that familiarity established, right? You're not a total rando, right? On LinkedIn, you're a fellow member of the group, and it makes sense, So in this example, in my connection request, again, you're always limited to 300 characters, but you can just simply say, hi, my name is Patricia. I am looking to expand my network on LinkedIn with people in the D&I space, and I see that we're both in D&I leadership group, and again, 9 times out of 10, that person is going to add you back. I mean, you're both in the same group and you're both in the same, professional space. It's pretty rare that somebody would decline that. So, again, this is being strategic. It's expanding your network. It's, again, a field of interest for you, right? And then we'll get into, what you're going to do to then, message those new connections for informational interviews. Okay. So again, once they accept your connection request, and I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, they will do that. It's really time to start to employ some relational networking, right? Again, so this is not the copy pasta. They are now a connection of yours. So you don't have a character limit and you can actually just, talk to them, right? Again, it's going to require a little bit of effort, though, right? Because this is relational and you are actually making an effort to try to get to know the person. So you are going to want to, first of all, research their LinkedIn profile. Okay. And I'm not saying for like an hour. I'm just saying like literally go to their profile and just kind of go through it. Where did they go to school? That's one of the first things I'll say, right? Like maybe you're from the same alma mater, right? It's possible. Look at their interests. That's another thing. Like I'll always do that, right? I'm just making this up, but are they following Gary Vaynerchuk or something, right? Or I don't know, I can't off the top of my head, but if you have an interest that's similar, you're just looking for something that you can utilize as an icebreaker, right? Have they maybe posted like a website or a blog of theirs? Just kind of skim through it. A lot of people, not a lot, some people write articles and they publish them on LinkedIn. Again, if you notice that, read them, right? I'm not saying, not 1,000 of them, but you just want to try to like get a feel for that person and maybe just take, even if you're writing it down, a few notes, right? And then it's not really a template. I know I said send them the template, but listen, at the end of the day, you want to start off and just thank them for accepting the request, right? And you just want to start to talk to them, right? So again, I'm kind of using this DNI example because I'm actually in a DNI group, but so we can see that this woman, who I'm actually not connected to, says right in her headline, she is a DNI evangelist. So, I mentioned that right off the bat. I find that really interesting and relevant to the DNI work that I'm currently hoping to do. I also saw from your profile that you are founder of your own company, which she is, and that's also in her headline, which is really impressive. I would love to hear more about your career journey and how you got to where you are today. Would you happen to have a few moments to discuss further? So it's a general template. Of course, I'm saying add the research you do and your own personality into the mix. But what's really good about this is you're not asking for something right off the bat. Like that's not how life works, right? Like this person doesn't know you at all. So to just right off the bat be asking about, is your company hiring? I need a job. Like that's not relational, right? And it's not realistic, right? There's no reason why somebody would want to help you if they don't know you. And it's also almost kind of like borderline rude, right? But if you do it in this way, it's more organic. And just one more time, you're both in the group, right? So there's already a commonality there. And then she'll read the message and know you at least spent a little bit of time. I know that those things were in her headline, but still, right? I at least spent some time putting the message together. It wasn't copy pasta, right? And that all increases the chances of getting a response back. I can tell you as a recruiter, the people who just took 2 seconds to just maybe say, oh, hey, I went to Rutgers too, Patricia. It just makes you feel a bit better than, hey, is Dow Jones hiring? Like I wouldn't even sometimes be addressed by name. Again, sometimes the tone matters, right? And how you approach people matters in terms of increasing the likelihood of a response and then actually building a connection. So again, just one more time, your goal with the relational networking is honestly to build a relationship, right? But it's 2 separate tracks though that you want to work on at the same time. That just to mention that again. So it is, sending the connection request to every recruiter after every single application. That's the short note because you have the 300 character limit. But then it's also the relational networking on LinkedIn groups and just methodically doing it. And again, if you do it twice a week, every week, I'm not even saying like 5 to 10 minutes, but if you methodically do it, you are going to see your network grow. And you'd be surprised. People are more willing to have these conversations than you would think, right? I know somebody asked me that one time and, she was like, how did you go from being in a call center? Because I actually started off in customer service to working at Dow Jones and Bank of America. And I was surprised that she went back that far in my history on my LinkedIn, and was no one does that. So I actually got on the phone with her and we talked for like a half an hour. And I went through my story with her, because back then Rutgers didn't even have an HR degree when I went to school. So it was just very interesting. So yeah, it's all about how you approach people. You'd be surprised. So many people are like, nobody's going to want to have these conversations with me. They're going to think I'm bothering them and I'm annoying them. And that's not true. So yeah, I really encourage you guys, have a template. For me, that's easier, but it's just a base template. You're going to mix it up every time you interact with someone else, and you will be able to expand your network. Okay. All right. And then listen, we've spent a lot of time, or kind of a lot of time on LinkedIn, but of course there's more to life than LinkedIn, right? So don't just limit yourself to LinkedIn. You also want to keep in mind that a lot of people are messaging on LinkedIn, right? You do have the people, of course, that are paying for LinkedIn Premium. So if you want to stand out a little bit more, again, I'm all about the all above approach, right? You want to email recruiters directly into their work inbox, because that's going to make you stand out. I would always stop. I'd be like, wait, who is that, right? That's not a Dow Jones email. Like, it would always kind of like startle me, okay? So that does make you stand out. So there's a free method for actually being able to obtain email addresses for recruiters and hiring managers, okay? And like I said, you can then email them directly to their work inbox. So what you'll want to do is the exact method we just talked about, right? To find their name on LinkedIn. You're going to do what I said. You're going to put the company in, click on employees. You're going to put in the location for where you applied to the position. You are going to type recruiter into title. You're going to click apply, right? Because you're applying the filter. And then once you have that first and last name, you're going to go to a website called rocketreach.co. It is not .com, okay? So rocketreach.co, it is free. And you're going to put that person's first and last name and the company they work with into the search box, okay? When you do that, it is going to pull up, multiple different email addresses, okay? And I don't know, it's just the way the website is, okay? Like usually about 3 to 5 email addresses, possible addresses come up. So what I suggest for you to do actually is to just email those addresses separately. Here's my thing, you have nothing to lose, right? If one of the emails is wrong, you're just gonna get a bounce back, who cares, right? But if one of the email addresses is right, then you were, able to show up into that recruiter's and that hiring manager's inbox at work. And like I said, that will definitely make you stand apart. This is all about how to differentiate yourself and give yourself the maximum chance of getting hired, right? So yeah, and then, you just obviously want to send them an email about your application, right? You do. You want to send them an email, just short and sweet, very similar to what I was discussing sending on LinkedIn. You can attach an email, if you want. Obviously, they already have your, attach the resume if you want. Obviously, they already have your resume though, right? But again, it's just about the visibility, guys. Like 500 applications. LinkedIn actually tells you how many applications are coming in per role. And right now, with everything happening with the economy, I've seen, 700, 800. It's just not possible for one recruiter to go through all of that. You're just giving yourself every single chance you can for that recruiter to pick up the phone and call you. Okay, I wasn't sure, are there questions? I didn't want to just jump right into the next section without pausing for a moment.
We do. We have several questions. So a first question is, should you reach out to more than one recruiter in an organization?
Okay, you definitely can. And that's a great question. I've seen that work where somebody got hired because she reached out to the whole team. And my supervisor was like, that shows such initiative and such grit. So yeah, you most definitely can do that, especially like I said, because most recruiters' profile is not going to tell you whether or not they recruit for the role you applied for. So yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that.
Okay, so another question that came up, or sort of it's a two-part question. If an organization has employees that act as hiring managers, should you still send a connection request via LinkedIn, or is it better to follow up via email?
Okay, so I want to make sure I got the question, because if this is if this is like after you apply for the job, but it's before the interview, it's the case. I hate to say case by case basis, but like it kind of depends. I would say for LinkedIn, definitely keep it to the recruiter, because like they're just like the first line of defense, the gatekeepers and all of that, right? With Rocket Reach, I guess I'm just trying to give you guys an additional method, right? But I would definitely reach out to recruiters first, and then, you know, hiring managers maybe later, you know, in the process. So, or honestly, if you don't get a response from the recruiter, I'll say that too, right? Because you're not always going to get a response, and there is that rare person that might not even accept your connection request, right? So, you know, with the method I gave in terms of like what I showed, the example of Lockheed Martin, you can probably find the hiring manager most times for the position too. Again, you have to dig sometimes, but you can usually find out the department and things like that. So yeah, like I said, it's kind of just what I'm talking about, the all of the above approach. There's nothing wrong with kind of combining these methods.
Yeah, I think people are concerned about whether it's like too bold to reach out directly to, you know, someone that they don't know on LinkedIn, whether it's a hiring manager or a recruiter, or should they be doing both? So I think that you're right. You know, I would agree that it's sort of a case by case basis, and it depends on whether you've already maybe sent an application for a job,
Right.
or you're still, you know, it's pre application period.
Right.
So. Another question that came in, which was interesting, is, you know, someone said, I'm currently employed, but I'm looking to move to a different state, hoping to move for an outdoor lifestyle of Colorado from Massachusetts. My current employer doesn't know I'm looking to move, but should I put that I'm looking to relocate in my About Me section on LinkedIn? I don't want to let my current employer know until I actually get a new position. And so that leads to sort of, you know, another question, or we, you know, maybe you can address also the looking at privacy settings in your LinkedIn profile, you know, to make sure that, you know, everyone doesn't know that you're job seeking. So, you know, who can you let know that, you know, what kind of activity or what kind of messaging you have going out on LinkedIn. So
yeah, sure. So it's a great question. So to address his question first, right? There is a way, and I'm going to speak generally as well. There is a way on LinkedIn to only let recruiters know that you're looking, and you can also specify the positions that you're interested in, right? But again, only recruiters will see it. It's a couple of steps. It's a little bit much to get into now. Like I said, I'm happy to send it to anyone who wants that information kind of after the, you know, after this is over. But I always suggest that to people, right? Because it's a way for any recruiter on LinkedIn to see that you're open to new opportunities without letting anyone else know, right? So in other words, unless the person has a premium recruiter license on LinkedIn, they won't be able to see it. Now, in terms of the relocation question, I would not put that in the summary, just because he meant, I believe he mentioned that a supervisor is not aware that he's looking. What I would say though, is that is something that when he's applying for jobs that he can put, and he might be already doing this, but that he could put in his cover letter, right? Just so that they're aware, right? Because sometimes the recruiter sees that your current location is not in the same state, right? You know, there might be a little bit of confusion, or they're not sure that you're moving, et cetera. So yeah, I suggest, like, you know, definitely putting the setting on LinkedIn, that only lets recruiters see that you're looking and looking for XYZ opportunities. LinkedIn even lets you put the location, right? So that's also good because he's looking to move. He could put, he's looking for XYZ role in Colorado. Again, only a recruiter can see that, not the hiring manager. The managers, don't have recruiting licenses. But then, yeah, it's also something he could mention in his cover letter just to make sure that a recruiter looking at his resume doesn't get confused by his current address.
Great, thank you. Here's a really interesting question. And we tried to summarize it from the original question. So hopefully I'll get the point across. But how do you balance authenticity, i.e. networking in a way that feels more natural with a more strategic or structured approach? Like, where is authenticity most beneficial and what should I keep in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that I'm going to be completely transparent. Like when I was, looking for a job before I started my business, I tried to find that balance as well, right? For me, and it might be different for different people, I always like to operate off of a base template, but then I would switch it up and I would add things to it, right? Because to that individual's point, you don't want to sound robotic, right? And I would have sometimes like over 100 messages in my LinkedIn inbox, right? When I recruited, it does get to recruiters too, right? Like reading the same messages over and over again. So there's definitely a balance to strike. I found, I can only speak for myself, but the best ways I found was to go through people's interests. So I'd always scroll to the bottom of their LinkedIn profile, look at their interests, and I don't know, I'll be honest, like even sometimes if I wasn't totally into an interest the person had, I might like mention it in the message because you have to find some kind of common ground. That's what I'll say, right? So if you did go to the same university or something, like you have to find something to talk about. So that's what I would say. Try to find the commonality and try to weave it in, but then you do always have to make that transition into why you're actually messaging them, right? So even that example I gave with the woman who was in D&I, I'm still reaching out to her because yes, I want to find out about her career journey, but it's kind of a thing where it's like, we both know that obviously I am also trying to further my career in D&I. So I would say, it's a great question. Both parties always kind of know what's going on. It's really, like she said though, about the genuineness and the approach, right? In my message to the example I showed you guys, it at least showed that I had looked into her enough to see she owned her own business. I put the name of the company and I showed some genuine interest in, wow, how did you get to the point where you founded your own company? So it's a delicate balance to strike. I'm not going to lie and say it's not, but I think it's easier to have some kind of a base template and then adjust it based on the research you do and personalize it from there and then add those genuine touches like as you interact with the individual.
Well, I think what we should do is move on to your next section.
Okay.
And if there are any more questions, we can address those at the end.
Okay, sounds good. So
okay, thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, you guys, we're going to move on to interview prep, right? So we've covered job search strategies, definitely covered networking techniques and LinkedIn. So hopefully at that point, a recruiter has picked up and you've got an interview scheduled. So let's go through that. So interview like a star. Okay. How do you have a rock star interview, right? You're going to want to actually utilize the STAR method. So let's just go through what that is. Okay, so STAR stands for situation, task, action, result, okay? What was the situation? What was the task? What was the action that you took? And what was the result, okay? It's just a great way to be able to come up with answers, okay, in an interview. It gives you a narrative. It's just a great way to kind of get all that in a little compact answer that you can then unpack, has layers to it, okay? So let's kind of go through some real life examples to illustrate the method. So what's the situation, right? Just want to think about maybe like a project that you had or an initiative that maybe you led, maybe you were an integral part of, maybe it was a competition or a challenge during an internship. There might have been an issue that was identified that you were assigned to address or resolve. Okay, so that's a situation. And then you're going to want to ask yourself, like, what was the specific task, right? So let's just go through some examples here. So let's say there was a competition during an internship where you were asked by the company to develop an app within a certain period of time. Okay, so it was deadline driven. And then let's give one more example. Maybe there was a media company and they were looking to increase their digital subscriptions amongst younger college age students. Okay. And then what was the action that you took? All right, so going back to the first example with the internship at the tech company, let's just say that you were asked to develop an app and it was tracking all sorts of different nutritional information for their members, such as macros, weight, progress pictures, the food that they ate every day. And they especially wanted like a social media component where their members could leave each other comments and emojis, okay, on the pictures and things of that nature. The second example was the media company looking to increase their digital subscriptions, right? So let's say the action you took in that scenario is that you pitched and implemented a 1-year subscription for college students that was free, that included a TikTok-esque daily news section, okay? So to appeal more to that age range. And then finally, what was the result, right? So again, in the first example with the app for the tech company, essentially they were developing an app for a meal delivery service. Okay, so once they started to offer that app to their members, they actually saw subscriptions increase by 33%. Okay. In the second example with the media company, because they were giving that subscription free for a year, they did see an increase amongst college-age students of over 50%. And the TikTok, like the bite-sized news segments, actually ended up garnering millions of views. Okay. Okay, so that's a method, again, that you can use for any situation at any job, right? That will help you, like I said, if you go into the interview, when they ask you questions, whether it's, behavioral, competency, et cetera, to really have your answer in a compact manner, okay? But you also want to have a career narrative as well, okay? So let's kind of go into that a little bit. So what's your narrative, right? What is your why? How does your why tie into the job that you apply to, right? And what's the narrative thread tying everything together, right? Your time in college, the internships you did, as well as your work experience. So what's your why? That's something that you really have to examine, right? Maybe you don't. Maybe some people know that just from the moment they go to college, but some people do need to examine it. Like, why are you actually pursuing this position, right? You finally get an interview, but like pause a moment before you do the interview to think about that. Why do you actually want to work at this organization? Do they have values that align with yours? What's that reason? Why do you want to work in the field, right? So take a step back, maybe more at a macro level, and kind of have these answers ready before you meet with the hiring manager. And if it aligns with what you majored with in college, why did you choose the major, right? So this just helps like to build that narrative, to kind of have this in your mind again before you even attend the interview with the manager. And then, once you have that figured out, how does that tie into your application, right? So basically your why is your passion, right? It's your purpose, it's your lifeline behind all of these applications, right? So I'm just giving a couple of examples here. Of course, it could be anything, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, are you somebody who really cares about climate change, right? And this is why you're pursuing this opportunity. Maybe you're a D&I evangelist, right? Maybe you truly believe that things need to change in corporate America, and that's why you're pursuing this role, and it's what you want to do with your career. Maybe you're somebody that believes that technology can positively impact the future, right? And that is very broad, but that could be anything from VR to AR. It encompasses so many different things. But this is what I mean, to just delve a little bit deeper and to actually know this about yourself. It's not just about going on the company website and memorizing information. You want to have this narrative set before you interview with the company. And then finally, as I said, what is the narrative thread, right, that runs through all of this? So just like any good book, just like any good movie, if you guys saw Tenet, whatever it is, you need to have a narrative thread that actually pulls everything together, right? So let's just, again, go back to the D&I example for a moment here. So maybe the narrative thread for somebody who is pursuing a opportunity and even a career in D&I, it might be because they're really passionate about equality, right? Especially diversity and inclusion. And they're really looking to spearhead efforts, right, to address some of the systemic, racism that is kind of embedded in corporate America. And they're looking to maybe go beyond some of the social media posts that some of these companies have been posting over the past couple of months. And perhaps a specific area of interest for them is unconscious bias, right? The bias that occurs without even thinking about it, right? And maybe trainings and workshops to address that, right? As well as, the lack of BIPOC, right? In executive roles, right? Looking into what leads to that and how to address it. So that's the narrative thread, right? So you want all of those pieces, right? And then finally, to kind of top it all off, the cherry, if you will, on the cake, I guess, you need to be cohesive, compelling, and engaging in the interview as well. So you have all of this information, but there's another question of why should they care, right? So you just want to have that answer again before you interview. You want to make sure that they care. You want to be compelling. And engaging, right? It's okay to just like tell some interesting stories or little anecdotes, right? About maybe experiences that you might have had in college, right? Or an internship. Sports is a great example. Like I played softball for 10 years, I ran track, right? So there's tons of examples of teamwork and things like that. Just anything where you can kind of form that personal connection with the interviewer. And just be personable, right? Like it's okay to smile, of course there's nervousness and anxiety going into an interview, but you do want to make it more of a conversation and less of an interview, right? Of course, still be professional, but that's some advice I would give. It's a way for you to stand out. Again, my number one thing is how do you stand out, right? You're not the only person being interviewed, trust me, right? So you want to stand out. So just to go into that a little bit more, don't be a robot, right? You don't want to be robotic. It's boring, it's a turnoff, right? It might be taken as a lack of confidence even, right? The hiring manager is human too. I think sometimes people forget, like recruiters are human, the manager's human. Like I said, it's okay to be a little bit humorous within reason. I'm saying be appropriate, but you can smile, give some interesting tidbits about yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. I also mentioned to you guys, just from my time as a recruiter, the managers are nervous sometimes too. Like the managers sometimes don't like interviewing, but they have to. So keep it in mind, everybody's human, right? So don't be robotic. And again, just to kind of continue with that, don't be afraid to show your personality, okay? Oftentimes there will be a moment in that interview where the hiring manager will kind of take a break from asking you all the questions about your resume and everything else and just ask you what your hobbies and interests are, right? And don't be afraid to take that opportunity to let your personality shine through. Giving you guys an example here, are you an Among Us fanatic? It's kind of sus. It's like mention that, right? Maybe the hiring manager doesn't know what it is. Explain it to the hiring manager, right? It's a social party. It's kind of like mafia. Maybe he knows what mafia is. Like you could build a connection just off of that, right? Also, don't assume, like, you don't know what people are into, right? My 72-year-old father loves anime. So it's like, you never know what the manager is into or not into. Just, again, within reason, don't be afraid to discuss your more quirky hobbies. You don't have to be robotic. You don't have to be boring. It actually humanizes you, and it does make the conversation more interesting. Okay, and I just, Nicole, were there questions about that section?
We did have a couple more questions. So one question that came up is about what are your thoughts on a search for roles that are remote versus in a particular region? It seems that more places are open to folks working from home, and so regional parameters are less of an issue? Not sure.
Yeah, that's a great question, especially with everything that's going on, honestly, with the pandemic. And the person you asked that is absolutely right. A lot of the tech companies, I don't have the list off the top of my head, but I think Facebook, Slack, I think they're not even having their employees show up in the office until next year. So I feel like they're starting to set a tone of people are eventually shifting to work from home. And there are a lot more remote opportunities that are open in general, right? And when I say remote, I mean totally remote, not remote until the lockdown ends. So definitely, there are actually websites job boards that just have remote opportunities. Those are the ones that I suggest. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to send that individual the link. That's actually a website that I was on, again, when I was job searching. And there's more and more popping up every day. So yeah, I would say, you can definitely go to like Indeed and just type in job title remote. That's a great way too. But I find that the job boards that are specifically for remote work, they sometimes get those opportunities quicker. But I definitely see them opening up more, especially as some of these big name companies seem to be making that pivot as well.
I've noticed that too. And some job search engines have put in, a search on remote only, or making that more obvious rather than at the bottom of the job description. And on our website, we do have a section on resources for right now that has some search engines and job boards that are either all remote or companies that are hiring right now during this climate. So we can send that out with your materials too.
Great.
Another question that came up that's interesting is, are there good ways to talk about experiences on your resume and in interviews with more abstract qualitative examples versus quantitative examples?
Okay.
And I mean, I would say your answer around the STAR method, is exactly that, is talking about, going through the process of talking about how you made the decisions you did. How did you, what were you thinking before you acted?
Exactly. I was going to say that, Nicole, that was a great point, because I'm honestly going to answer this two ways. So honestly, it is very important to have quantitative numbers and things like that, like the measurable achievements and, all of that. But there is definitely a way, though, to use that STAR method. That's why I think STAR is so great. I know it's so well known for interview method, but it can literally be applied to anything. It can definitely be applied to what that individual just asked, right? Literally, if you just take each letter from the acronym and you kind of just write it out, it would definitely give you what you would need to compose the bullet points, right, for that part of the resume. So yeah, there's definitely a way to do that for your document.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is also something that, you can talk about with a career advisor. So you can make an appointment with Leslie or I, or even reach out to Patricia and sort of walk through, how do you answer, an interview question when you don't have numbers, when you just, sort of you want to use sort of qualitative, a description. And I think we do that all the time. And that's how we actually help people construct resumes. You know, I actually went through with someone the other day who didn't have numbers to sort of back things up, but we used good adjectives. And we talked about outcomes, but we didn't have to quantify. So here's a final question that came through. I don't know if we have a couple. Okay, so how do you, this is advice for older applicants facing potential age discrimination. Do you have any advice for job searchers over 50 so that they avoid the pitfalls of being excluded from the job search process? And maybe another question to add to that for this community is, how do you weave together more complex career narratives that entail multiple career paths? Like, how do you choose only one to talk about? So go ahead.
I'm sorry, Nicole. No, I apologize about, I thought it was the end of the question, but no, that's a really great question. It's something that comes up a lot for me with my clients that are, like you said, over 50, because it is a real thing. I can't sit here and lie about that, right? Because I did see it happen, unfortunately, right? Like age discrimination happens. And I know that there's different advice out there in terms of don't put your graduation date, for instance, on your resume. That's one thing people will say. I think it's hard. It's a balance to strike, because on the one hand, I hate giving advice that almost allows the discrimination, or I don't know how, because it shouldn't be happening. But what I would say, and what I do with my clients, I've worked with people that are 65 and older than that, is as he's alluded to, one of the greatest strengths though with candidates in that age range is all of the experience that they have, right? And at that point, it's not one narrative, right? As I was talking about in my slide, it's multiple narratives that you then are weaving together, right? So depending on what it is, right? And I don't know how many, I don't know the industries and things like that the person has worked in. But there's definitely a way, right, of doing that high level summary statement at the top of the document that really goes through the story of the person's career, but then is still targeting, what they're looking for now, right? So, so that's one way, but there's also sometimes if completely different fields, I will provide multiple summary statements, right? So it's not that the resume is changing, because your bullet points are still going to be the same. But like I said, if it's a totally unrelated field that the person's worked in, I would say you do want a different opening statement at the top, right? Really address that. But that's a great question, and it's complex, right? Because it's unfortunately something that happens that shouldn't be, because it's illegal, right? But unfortunately, it does happen.
Yeah, and I would echo your thoughts on, summarizing at the top of your resume, having a professional summary, or a summary of qualifications. It's not a waste of real estate. It's really important, if you're a seasoned professional, to set the tone for what is probably a 2-page resume, and a willingness to be changing up that summary, or we call it a narrative, on the resume, and tailor it to the positions you're applying for. While the About Me section on LinkedIn, that might have to stay the same, because you couldn't necessarily be changing that up for each and every job. So that's a good example of how your LinkedIn profile is different perhaps than your resume, and maybe the benefits of being able to change your resume more frequently. Although I'd have to say that most people I know are changing their LinkedIn, they're adapting their LinkedIn.
Well, I was going to say, I have different versions of my LinkedIn summary.
Yep.
Not so much now because I started my business, but I did have different versions before. I was a freelancer at one point. I had a freelancer version. I had a recruiter version. So yeah, I would say you can save them and pop them in, pop them out, right? Yeah. Because it depends on what you're focused on. Because if you want recruiters passively looking you up, let's say for a recruiter job, you don't want to have a freelance resume writer summary in. But yeah, no, that's a great point, Nicole.
Yeah. And I would say, for older applicants, definitely reach out, and get help, get advice. Don't do this by yourself. It's sometimes, you know, useful for you to tell your story to a coach or an career advisor in Alumni Career Services, and let us reflect back to you what we hear, and we can help you put that together. I really think it's hard to be job searching on your own. So we're glad that you're in this webinar today, you know, listening and asking questions, but take the next step and reach out to someone who can provide, you know, a more objective sort of, again, sort of response to all that you've done. Because when you have all of that experience, you know, I love to hear those stories. I love to hear, you know, about the sum of the whole, I guess you could say. So I think we've run out of time, Patricia, and I want you to be able to, you know, put your slide up there and to show your websites and how to get in touch with you. Was there anything that you wanted, you know, to say in summary?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody who joined today. I hope that you all found, you know, these strategies and techniques helpful. Please feel free to reach out to me. If you're on LinkedIn, it's just, /Patricia P. Figueroa. That's a little bit hard to spell. Or you can just email me, careerglowup@gmail.com. I'm happy to share with you guys the job applicant tracker. It's just a Google sheet. I'm happy to share that. Or some of the templates that I mentioned, I actually have them in a PDF template. So if any of you guys are interested, just like shoot me an email, shoot me a connection request on LinkedIn. I do offer services too. So anybody looking for any of that, just feel free to reach out. And I just really thank you for your time today. And I hope you found it informative and helpful.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. We look forward to having you back next month to hear about your passion, which is, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, a very focused topic, but we're looking forward to that. So thank you again. And for everyone who's still on the webinar, we'll be sending out follow-up email to everyone with links and a survey. And this recording should be available on our YouTube playlist in about a week. So you can look for it there on the Tufts Alumni and Friends Advance Your Career website. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Patricia.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
All right.